I've been thinking about faithfulness lately. And I think for a long time, I imagine faithfulness would feel more exciting than it actually does. We love the big moments, the breakthrough, the calling, the decision, the moment you finally take the leap, the prayer that gets answered, the door that opens. Those moments, they make good stories. But most of life doesn't happen in those moments. Most of life happens in between them. You wake up, you go to work, you take care of your family, you pay the bills, you clean the house. You make dinner, you answer the email, you exercise, you pray, you read scripture, you keep your word, and you go to sleep. Then you wake up again and you do it again and again and again. And there's not always some overwhelming feeling of purpose attached to it. Sometimes it's just an ordinary Tuesday. And I'm beginning to think that's where most of faithfulness actually lives. Not in the extraordinary moments, but in doing the ordinary thing well. For a long time, that's difficult for us because we live in a culture obsessed with transformation. 30 days to this, 90 days to that, before and after, overnight success, the moment everything changed. And I understand why. Transformation is exciting, maintenance isn't. Nobody makes a dramatic video about brushing their teeth every morning for 30 years, but that's how you keep your teeth. Nobody celebrates paying the mortgage for the 100th time. Nobody applauds the 1,000th healthy meal. Nobody sees the ordinary prayer that you prayed this morning. Nobody gives you an award because you came home from work and you loved your family again. But those things build a life. And I've started realizing a good life may be much less about a few enormous decisions and much more about thousands of small ones. That's both encouraging and intimidating because it means that today matters. Not because something extraordinary has to happen today, but because today's another brick, another repetition. And that's hard for most of us because it's just another opportunity to become the person that we're becoming. Jesus said something that keeps coming back to me. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. We naturally want the much. God, give me the opportunity. Give me the give me the platform. Give me the resources. Give me the responsibility. Show me the calling that you have on my life. And maybe sometimes God's asking, what are you doing with Tuesday? And what are you doing with the little? The responsibility nobody thinks is impressive, the person that nobody else notices, the money that's already in your account. What are we doing with these ordinary things and these ordinary moments? The body that you already have, the family that's already in your home, the work already sitting in front of you. That's where faithfulness starts. And honestly, sometimes it's boring. And I don't mean meaningless, those are not the same thing. Some things can feel ordinary, but be incredibly meaningful. Parenting has taught me that. There are beautiful moments, first words, birthdays, milestones, things that you'll remember forever. But then there's also diapers, baths, meals, cleaning, repeating yourself, picking up toys that you picked up yesterday. And somehow, those ordinary things are part of loving a child. You don't raise a family through a handful of incredible moments. You raise one through presence repeated over years. The same is true of marriage. You don't build a marriage with one wedding day. You build it with thousands of ordinary days afterward, choosing each other again, having conversations, forgiving, serving, laughing, carrying responsibilities, staying when things aren't exciting, learning each other as you both change along this course. Love becomes powerful partly because it's repeated. That's something our culture doesn't always understand. We chase intensity, but consistency often matters more. And I think about faith in that way too. Sometimes we want some overwhelming spiritual experience. We want to feel God's presence powerfully. We want a revelation, a sign, a moment that changes everything. And God absolutely gives moments like that. But then morning comes, and eventually faith becomes opening scripture again, praying again, forgiving again, resting and resisting temptation again, trusting, serving, not because you feel something extraordinary every time, but because you've decided what your life and where your life is pointed. That's maturity. And I've learned this through work too. Sometimes starting something is exciting. You have the idea, you imagine what it could become, and you make the plan. You get that first result, there's energy, but then eventually you encounter repetition. The 10th day, the 100th call, the 100th page, the 100th customer, the part where nobody cares how motivated you feel. The work still needs to be done, and that's where a lot of dreams die. Not because the dream was impossible, but because the dream became a routine. And we thought that purpose would always feel powerful. Then purpose started asking us to do repetitive things, and we got bored. I've been guilty of that. I love vision. I love thinking about what something could become. But vision without repetition is just imagination. Eventually, something has to be done again tomorrow. That's why discipline matters. Motivation says, I'll do this because I feel inspired. Discipline says, I've decided this matters. That's different. And I don't want to turn discipline into another form of self worship. There are people who become obsessed with routines. Wake up at exactly this time, take the cold shower, do the workout, read the books, track everything, optimize everything, and suddenly life becomes one giant performance metric. And that's not what I'm talking about. Rest matters, spontaneity matters, and celebration matters too. There are seasons where routines need to change. Sometimes the faithful thing is actually stopping. But I do think that there are tremendous values in becoming someone who can continue doing good after the excitement fades. Because excitement always wears off. Every new thing eventually becomes familiar. The new job becomes work. The new house becomes home. The new relationship enters ordinary life. The new opportunity becomes responsibility. And if we require constant novelty to remain grateful for our life, we'll spend our entire lives searching for the next thing. Maybe one of the marks of wisdom is learning to rediscover the value of what has become familiar. That hits me because familiarity, it can make gifts invisible. The spouse you've loved for years, the children that you see every morning, the roof that you've lived under so long you barely notice it, the job that you once prayed for, the body that carried you through another day, the food in the refrigerator, the people who still answer your calls. We can become bored with things we would be devastated to lose. So I don't want to do that. I want to learn how to remain grateful after something stops becoming feeling new, right? Maybe faithfulness and gratitude are connected because gratitude helps us recognize this ordinary life I'm living is still a gift. I don't need every day to be extraordinary. I need to wake up and be awake for it. There's another reason that ordinary faithfulness matters: compounding. Small things don't look powerful at first. Save a little money one time, not much happens. Exercise one time, not much happens. Read scripture once, you don't suddenly know everything. You have one meaningful conversation with your child, that's good, but it's one conversation. Then repeat those things for 20 years. Now something has happened. Small decisions multiplied by time become enormous. And the opposite is true too. Small neglect also compounds. One day doesn't seem like much, but direction repeated long enough becomes destination. And that's why I think that God cares so much about faithfulness in little things. Little things don't stay little when you repeat them for a lifetime. Character itself is built that way. You don't become honest because you told the truth one time. You become honest by repeatedly choosing truth. You don't become generous because you gave once. You became generous by practicing generosity. You don't become patient because you handled one frustrating situation really well. Patience is built through the hundreds of opportunities to become impatient and learning to respond differently. We become what we repeatedly practice and what we repeatedly do. That makes ordinary life sacred because today I'm practicing something. The question is, what? What am I practicing? Am I practicing distraction, complaint, anger, avoidance, selfishness? Or am I practicing patience, presence, discipline, gratitude, prayer, love, faithfulness? Whatever I repeatedly do, I'm becoming better at. That's worth paying attention to. Paul wrote, let us not be weary in doing good, and at the proper time we'll reap a harvest if we don't give up. I love that because it acknowledges something. We can become weary doing good. That's real. Sometimes you're doing the right thing and you're tired. You're being faithful and you don't see results. You're raising your children and wondering whether anything you're teaching them is getting through. You're building something and growth is slow. You're praying and the situation hasn't changed. You're serving and nobody seems to notice. You're trying to become healthier and progress isn't dramatic. You're doing good and part of you wonders, is any of this working? Paul doesn't pretend that that feeling doesn't happen. He says, don't give up. The harvest has a season. That's how farming works. You don't plant a seed on Monday, dig it up on Tuesday, and complain that there's no fruit. You water it, protect it, you wait, you keep working. And for a long time, a lot of what's happening is invisible. Maybe that's true in our lives too. Not every season produces visible fruit. Some seasons are growing roots, and roots aren't impressive. Nobody photographs roots. When storms come, though, you discover why they mattered. Maybe some of the ordinary faithfulness your life has right now is building roots for something that you can't yet see. So keep going, not blindly. If something isn't working, learn, adjust, seek wisdom, and change. Faithfulness doesn't mean stubbornly repeating a bad strategy forever, but don't confuse slow progress with meaningless progress. And don't assume that God isn't working just because nothing dramatic is happening. Jesus spent roughly 30 years before his public ministry. Think about that. We know very little about most of those years. The Son of God lived an enormous portion of his earthly life outside the spotlight, growing, working, living in a family, being faithful in ordinary life. And that tells me something. Ordinary isn't beneath God, so it shouldn't be beneath me. Maybe I don't need every season of my life to become a story everyone wants to hear. Maybe some seasons are simply for becoming faithful. Wake up, love God, love your family, do your work, care for your body, keep your word. Help somebody and rest. Be grateful. Then tomorrow, do it again. And one day, you look backwards and those ordinary days have become a marriage, a family, a career, a body of work, a character, a life. And that's what I want. Not a life made entirely of spectacular moments, a life made of ordinary moments lived faithfully. Because I think that's where we reach the end. We may discover that some of the things that mattered most didn't feel important while we were doing them. The bedtime stories, the prayers nobody heard, the meals around the table, the quiet generosity, the honest work, the decisions to keep showing up again and again and again. Faithfulness isn't always exciting. Sometimes it's boring, but boring doesn't mean meaningless. Sometimes boring is what builds something beautiful. And, building something beautiful feels like one ordinary day at a time. So just remember, everything may feel ordinary right now, but it's your life and it's where you're headed. So until the next one, hey, peace.